From abandoned mining communities where it's rumored ghosts resulting from horrific accidents still roam, to historic mill sites harboring restless spirits and much darker manifestations. Are you ready for our third list of some of the most haunted ghost towns in the United States? Number 5. Burke. Burke, located in Burke Canyon in Shoshone County, Idaho, is a ghost town widely recognized for its plotted layout that's fit perfectly into a narrowing canyon space, giving it a uniquely identifiable appearance. Historically, in 1884, large deposits of lead and zinc were discovered within the canyon, and in 1887, the railroad would reach the area, prompting the formal establishment of the town of Burke. On February 4th of 1890, the first of several serious avalanches swept through Burke, resulting in major damages and in 3 fatalities, and later, in 1923, a large blaze tore through a good bulk of the community, leaving more than 600 homeless. Burke's last mine would finally close its gates in 1991, and though today around 300 reside in the canyon itself, the town is officially abandoned. Visiting Burke, one can expect to find the remains of structures long dormant, the massive Helka mining buildings, and, according to countless reports, a slew of inexplicable happenings, with those frequenting the area describing disembodied voices and screams, near constant electronic malfunctions, and orbs, mists, and ghostly silhouettes in the backgrounds of photos and video. Several periods of unrest through the town's history led to labor strikes and, incidentally, to physical disputes or shootouts. A handful of floods, avalanches, and fires claimed numerous lives. In 1892, a gunfight would ignite a box of dynamite, resulting in the deaths of 6, and in 1899, in response to the company firing 17 men, Bunker Hill was hit with dynamite, resulting in even more fatalities. And not surprisingly, it's theorized Burke is plagued by a number of associated restless spirits. Several have told of personal items that go missing, the constant feeling of being watched or followed, and of encounters with apparitions in old-fashioned clothing, some appearing grievously mangled, and informal investigations have yielded high EMF levels, chilling EVPs, and strange lights that float through the old buildings. Number 4. Terlingua. Located just off the Rio Grande in southwestern Brewster County lies the mining district and census-designated place of Terlingua, Texas, a ghost town standing as testament to prosperous mining days long gone that now boasts a population of just 110 residents. Historically, the name Terlingua was applied to a number of communities throughout the area, the original being a small Mexican village on Terlingua Creek, just 3 miles above its confluence with the Rio Grande. Through the mid-1880s, following the discovery of cinnabar in the region, the Marfa and Mariposa mining camps would merge together to form a newer Terlingua, with the earlier village taking the name of Terlingua IDAHO, or Lower Terlingua. When these camps were closed down in 1910, the Terlingua post office would be moved about 10 miles east to the Chisos Mining Company camp, and in 1942, when the operation declared bankruptcy and after its successor ceased operations preceding World War II, most of the local populace would set out to seek new lives elsewhere. In 1967, Terlingua would become famous for its annual chili cook-off, and eventually would be labeled as the chili capital of the world, allowing it to survive into the present off healthy waves of tourism. Sadly, inferior equipment, poor ventilation, and mercury contamination were just a handful of hardships faced by the town's early miners. From 1918 to 19, large influenza outbreaks would result in a number of fatalities, and a range of stories claiming its tumultuous past has resulted in a number of resident hauntings, with those frequenting the area reporting extreme cold spots, strange lights in the skies above, and the constant feeling of being followed or watched while wandering the streets. Many visiting, even skeptics, have pinned the area as giving off a strange vibe. Some claim infrasound or some sort of pulse, and several visitors have experienced blackouts, blurred vision, and even visual or auditory hallucinations. Lastly, a handful of investigations of Terlingua have yielded high EMF levels, EVPs displaying old-fashioned terminology and instruments, and encounters with a range of full-bodied apparitions. Number 3. Henry River Mill Village. Henry River Mill Village, located along a small gorge on the Henry River in Burke County, North Carolina, is an unaltered and slowly decaying site displaying an early textile village. Historically, in 1904, one Michael Estrastus Riddisill would lay out plans for the mill and an encompassing village over a 1,500-acre tract that would be self-contained and would also include its own dam, water sources, fire protection systems, and a company store. While the mill initially operated on water power, in 1914 a steam plant was installed, and later in 1926 the mill was converted entirely to electric power. In 1971, the mill would close its doors for a time, and in 1976, the property was purchased by Wade Shepherd. Shepherd would launch plans to restore the old structure, but sadly, in 1977, it would burn to the ground, and in 1987, the village's final residents would move on. In 2002, a series of restoration efforts of the mill and associated grounds would be launched, and in 2017, the expanse was purchased by one Calvin Reyes, who desired to highlight and capitalize on the history of the site. In 2019, the village was listed on the National Register of Historic Places, and today, most of its original structures remain standing, though some aren't exactly safe to enter. The village is privately owned but can be driven through via Henry River Road, and as a fun bit of trivia, acted as set to District 12 in the 2012 film based off of the Susan Collins novel series, The Hunger Games. Through its history, a number of ghost stories and local legends surrounding the village have been passed down, with those frequenting its bounds reporting doors opening and closing on their own, disembodied footsteps and voices from empty buildings, strange floating lights and ghostly faces that appear through windows, and accounts of objects being hurled at great speeds by forces unseen. What sounds like commotion between several men, always heard from just out of sight, has become so alarming it's warranted calls to local authorities, who always arrive to find the area completely empty. And through the whole of town, a number of full-bodied apparitions have been sighted, seemingly going about tasks from daily lives long forgotten to time. Number 2. South Pass City State Historic Site. South Pass City State Historic Site, located about 2 miles south of the Highways 28 and 131 intersection in Fremont County, Wyoming, is an unincorporated community turned historic site boasting an expanse of 389 acres, across which one can visit 45 preserved historic structures that showcase the city in its earlier years. Historically, through the 1850s, a community was first established on site as a much-needed stage stop and telegraph station along the Oregon Trail. In August of 1861, a 21-year-old Samuel Clemens, later to be known as Mark Twain, would pass through accompanied by his brother. In 1866, large gold discoveries in the region would prompt a rapid rise in prospecting, and by 1869, the site's population would swell to nearly 2,000. As a bit of trivia, present amongst early settlers was one Esther Hobart Morris, who would go on to become the first female justice of the peace in U.S. history. Unfortunately for the budding township, within a decade, gold deposits would fail. Over time, the local populace would begin seeking fortunes elsewhere, and by 1949, all the area's pioneer families had moved away. In 1968, South Pass City State Historic Site was formally established, and in 1970, it was placed on the National Register of Historic Places. Today, only a handful of residents remain, with the historic site kept alive off waves of tourism. In its earlier years, attacks from tribes native to the region were all but common, and it's believed that restless souls resulting from casualties on both sides remain across the old point, with officials and visitors reporting disembodied voices, the feelings of being watched, followed, or even touched by someone unseen, and the commotion of drums, voices, and the clash of battle, always heard at a distance. Some more infamous legends tell of the Bartlett Inn, which was once operated by Polly Bartlett and her father, who were believed to have killed over 22 men en route to the west. Chillingly, the duo would lace the travelers' food and drink with poison, would steal their possessions, and would then bury their remains in the cow pasture out back. It's rumored the spirits of the murdered remain, and those visiting have reported random waves of sadness, anger, hopelessness, and despair, phantom lantern lights that flit about, shadowy figures that stalk the living, and encounters with a range of full-bodied apparitions. Number 1. Ludlow. Located in the foothills of the Sangre de Cristo Mountains in Los Animas County, Colorado, lies the ghost town of Ludlow, a site made infamous for acting as stage to the Ludlow Massacre, which transpired amidst the Colorado Coalfield War in 1914. Historically, the community was first established through the early 1890s. In 1896, its post office would open, and in 1904, the Colorado and Southeastern Railway would lay tracks through the area, after which it would construct its Ludlow train station. In 1913, a massive strike pitted thousands of Colorado coalfield miners against their employers, and in response, company owners evicted miners and their families, resulting in massive tent cities sprouting up around the mines, the largest of which held 1,200. On April 20th of 1914, National Guard presence would surround this encampment and would open fire, sparking a battle that lasted through the day, and that resulted in 3 mine leaders being captured and later executed, while women and children took refuge in makeshift cellars below their tents. Following the skirmish, the National Guard would soak said tents in kerosene and would set them ablaze, claiming with them the lives of 25, 11 of which were children, and prompting an overwhelmingly violent retaliation from remaining miners that resulted in the killing of over 50 town officials and affiliated parties. Eventually, federal troops were sent in to quell the dispute. In 1916, the United Mine Workers of America would purchase the old tent site, and in 1917, they would erect the Ludlow Monument to commemorate those who gave their lives. The town would continue to serve the mines until they were closed down through the 1940s, and in 1954, the Ludlow Post Office would follow suit. In the present, and not surprising considering its past, Ludlow and surrounding lands are rumored to be haunted by the restless spirits of those killed in the massacre, as well as in subsequent battles, and many nearing have reported feeling the inexplicable and overwhelming sense of dread, the phantom sensations of being grabbed or hit, and hearing disembodied voices from empty areas. In a zone known as the Pit of Death, where the burned corpses of 11 children and 2 women were discovered, those nearing have recounted smelling charred flesh and fire smoke with no identifiable source, and several informal investigations have yielded high EMF levels, EVPs entailing screaming and crying, and orbs and strange mists in photography. Lastly, about 2 miles west of the Ludlow Memorial off County Road 44 lies the old mining site of Hastings, where 121 men lost their lives in an explosion in 1917, and those who have neared, especially after dark, have reported feeling the ground rumble beneath their feet, the sounds of a large combustion, and dying shrieks heard emanating from deep within the earth. Taking its fascinating and rather dark history into account, and coupling it with an impressive and terrifying range of purported paranormal activity and urban legends, we felt Ludlow was the perfect choice as the most haunted ghost town in the United States. Thanks for tuning in for our 3rd list of some of the most haunted ghost towns in the United States. If you enjoyed hearing our histories and ghost stories, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn notifications on. Throw us a like and share us with anyone you feel deserves a good scare. We'll catch you next time.